fourth set of the day. Sorry, excuse me, fifth set. It's going to be played on Newkirk between Fantasy and Ty. Spawning in the bottom right-hand position, Orange Terran from SK Telecom T1. His name is Fantasy.
His opponent in the bottom left-hand position, spawning as a blue Terran. His name is Ty, playing for a Kespa teammate.
You know what, Ty, man, he always looks kind of sad or like down in the dumps, man. Like, does he suffer from depression?
I don't know, that's just his facial expression. You know, look at Jadong. He always looked like he was ready to kill someone, man.
Yeah.
Back in Brood War days. So.
I'm actually pretty sure I've seen him kill at least like 20 nerds.
And some people, it just looks like they're gonna fall asleep pretty soon inside the booth. So, you know, it's just just because they don't look fierce when they're playing the game doesn't mean that they can't play the game well.
Yeah,
let's put it that way.
Just little fun things to point out there, I guess. You know, what else are you gonna comment on at the first few minutes of the game anyway? But both players, you know, of course, getting their supply depot down. But look at this. We do have a fast gas from Ty before Barracks. Generally, that does indicate that he wants to apply some type of pressure, maybe even a fast Reaper. Yeah, Reaper before Marine. You know, usually the Terran players get the Marine out first and then start going for the Reapers. But allowing himself to get the Refinery first means that he's going to have more gas. He could get the Reaper out as soon as the Barracks finishes, and he could even get the faster factory out for himself. Definitely both viable options here. And with Heart of the Swarm, of course, the Reaper moves a lot faster, and it does not require the Tech Lab to build. So a pretty popular choice from Terran players, I have to say. A lot of times if they want to get some good scouting information in. Also, don't forget the regeneration. Yeah, regeneration very useful as well. Allowing them to poke in and out, and even if they take some damage, you know, just run away for a little bit. Take a 5-minute break, come back, and scout some more. Actually, in some cases in TvT, if one player just tries to play too greedy, and if there's 2 Reapers inside the main base, those Reapers do not die because of the regen. Yeah, it's very true. All right, so Fantasy scouting out his opponent Ty here. He does spot the fast factor. That's definitely going to help him out in defending against this because Fantasy did not go for that fast gas. He's just going for a standard barracks opening here, not opting to go for a fast command center or anything like that. And I'm assuming he'll probably try to get a faster factory for himself, maybe even a few additional barracks if he wants to opt for more of an economical build and get the faster expansion out. But he does have to prepare for that factory. So he's going to try to get the reactor out. So this might be the reactor expand that we've been seeing a lot out of these Terran players these days. He's still sitting on 1 gas, which means that even if he gets the factory out, he can't get the high-tech units out. So all he's going to have is, you know, plenty of Hellions in the beginning of the game and possibly transitioning into mech. His opponent is going for the starport and Fantasy taking the expansion. Yes, indeed. Fantasy taking that expansion. Interesting. We're going to see a Widowmine drop here from Ty. And, you know, this map, it kind of plays to going for drop play because if you look, the air distance between the bases is actually not too large. So this is this might be a great chance for Ty to win the game, but it's also a risky move because if the drop doesn't do much, he didn't start his own command center, and he needs to deal some damage against his opponent, some SCVs, and even kill, you know, has to get more than 10, I have to say, because of the double command center. And look at this Fantasy, timing perfectly with his SCV scout set. His opponent is not building a command center, also gets a complete scout inside the main base. Yeah, so that's actually really bad for Ty there. I mean, Fantasy, he sees everything. He knows that the medevac is going to be on the way with those Widow Mines soon. He does see, well, I think he can assume now that there are units heading towards his direction on the map because he didn't spot anything in that main base. And behind this, he is going to go ahead, get that starport, even building a Hellion and a few more Marines right now against this. So this is going to be a duo. This might be a duo die for Ty because he's so far behind in economic ones. He needs to do some damage right now, but the Hellions are out and the Marines are not going to do anything. Ty going to try to buy as much time with the bunker, but also gets canceled. Yeah, the supply depot's moving back up again, and now Fantasy, he knows everything, man. He is completely 100% prepared for this drop. Even with the boosters, I don't think this is going to be too effective. And Ty, you know, trying to find a hole in Fantasy's defense, but it's just not going to happen. Also, remember, Fantasy does have up to 2 command centers, 2 orbital commands, which means that he's going to have double scans against the Widow Mine. So Fantasy is completely ahead in this game. Ty is still trying to make something happen. Oh, I like this play from Ty, putting down the Widow Mine at that natural. He's going to kill at least 1 SCV with that, and you know, force a scan as well from his opponent. So definitely a cost-efficient unit there from Ty, making the best of a situation where he couldn't really, you know, do any harassment with the Widow Mines due to the scout that happened.
I also want to commend the second Widow Mine positioning that's on the minimap right now. You know, usually Terran players, they try to send the medevac in that particular location.
So smart, doesn't even waste an SCV on that Widow Mine. He spots it in the ground before it even gets a shot off and just wastes one Marine to kill it off. So definitely a smart move from Fantasy. He is playing very solid here. We do see a Viking on the way from our Terran player Ty from Team 8.
Actually going to do this. I think Ty's going to try to draw out the Viking to the Widow Mine. Let's see if he can actually pull it off.
Well, that would be very interesting if he is able to do that. He's spotting it. He does see the Viking there. Fantasy, though, playing very smart. He's not going to fall for that. And look at this, Ty even trying to use the medevac to potentially bait out those Vikings. But there's 2 out for Fantasy now, and he's even going to repair that other Viking that got damaged.
Ty just playing around with fire. First, pretty much trying to get Fantasy to use the Vikings and trying to snipe the medevac, but it's not working out, man. Well, this time around, it might work out.
Widow Mine goes off, kills one of the Vikings, and the other one gets damaged. So it looks like Ty, his little annoying trick there did end up working. He only killed 1 Viking, and he did save the medevac. So, you know, just a little more cute plays there with the Widow Mines, but in the end, Fantasy still is in quite a solid position.
In the end, Ty takes a small lead, but Fantasy is still far ahead. He's getting a third command center for himself. The siege tanks are on the way, adding the second and the third barracks for inside the main base. So he's going to be pretty fine, but look at this. Ty, he doesn't want to give his opponent too much time to get ahead. That's why he's moving out on the map and going to try to pretty much try to set up a siege tank line outside of the natural.
All right, we do have a scan going off from Ty here, trying to see if he can get into a good position. The Viking count is in the advantage of Ty here, and Fantasy does lose a Viking and a few Marines. But look at this, Hellions at the natural of Ty, and there's nothing to respond to them, and they're going to be able to get a few kills off there. Siege tanks now trying to assault the high ground natural of Fantasy. The Hellions do get killed, and actually Fantasy only killing off a few workers there, not as much as I would imagine from him.
Yeah, he didn't focus down on the SCVs because he was focusing inside the main base. He needs to repair the bunker. If not, not the bunker, the barracks. If he doesn't do that, then he's gonna have to remake the barracks to get the factories out. Well, he does have the second and the third barracks.
Oh, Ty using his multitasking skills now. He does lose the medevac, but the Marines are doing a lot of damage, killing off actually a lot of SCVs here. I think he's already managed to get 8 or 9, and he's going to continue getting more and more SCVs. Fantasy dropping pretty far behind in supply now. 10 SCVs total killed here before those Marines go down. What an efficient trade for Ty there.
Now, still remember, Fantasy has up to 3 command centers, so he could replenish the SCVs right away, but certainly, really nice play by Ty, just going for the SCVs, knowing that he can't actually make the best out of it.
Yep, and we do have the stim upgrade on the way now for Fantasy. Is going to be moving into that biotank composition, while his opponent Ty is going to go for a mech-centric build.
What's funny about Fantasy is that people always made fun of him for his bio. And he started doing bio in Starcraft2, and it's working out fantastic for him. The first time I saw bio by Fantasy in a TvT was an Arkanoid against Classic. Worked out perfectly. And even in some cases, he's playing really well with bio. All he has to do is scout that his opponent is going mech and just get some Marauders out and start harassing around the map.
We do see Ty trying to move out now. He does have that critical blue flame upgrade, but that Marine, will it spot the medevac? Yes, the medevac is spotted by that Marine there. Fantasy will be alerted of this, and that Marine will die a gruesome death by blue fire. But the drop will not even happen at this point because Ty knows that Fantasy knows.
But also remember that he just showed blue flame to his opponent. That pretty much indicates that his opponent is going mech.
Exactly. You know, he only really showed a few Vikings, some Marines, and siege tanks earlier on, so the build order and unit composition wasn't definite for Ty, but pretty much it is now.
That was just like saying, hey, this is what I'm going for, so you better prepare against my Blue Flame Hellions. I have to say that was a little mistake by Ty.
Yep, Ty taking a little bit of damage here, trying the micro against those Marines there, but nothing going to happen there. He also has another medevac out on the map. He really wants to make something happen here against Fantasy because with mech, you do need to try to stay at least decently even or ahead in the supply.
Now remember, Ty just showed his 4 Hellions. That also pretty much means that the Marines are gonna be at the third base with the siege tanks. That allows Ty to try to go inside the main base once again, but Fantasy's Marine is there once again.
And deja vu all over again, and will we see another bait into that Widow Mine? The Viking, will it move or is it on hold position? Yes! Fantasy smart, it's on hold position. He also moves out, gets a few free unit snipes there as well. And we also see another Raven in production from Ty. I think this will be his second Raven out, at least at this point, so definitely wants to try to take advantage of those Widow Mines. Or sorry, of the Seeker missiles.
Oh, definitely. Now, Fantasy behind this because he has a mobility, just moving out on the map, taking complete map coverage, and also getting a forward command center for himself. Ty doesn't really need to get a fourth base right now. He's sitting on comfortable 3-base economy. He can get the mech units out whenever he wants to, and all he has to do is get the siege tanks out, form a siege line, and force Fantasy to stay inside his main base.
Exactly, that Marauder getting sniped off as well from those Hellions there. Fantasy doing his best to try to maintain a little bit of map control. Interestingly enough, we're not seeing any drops from Fantasy here. He's playing actually quite defensive against this mech composition, while Ty's the one that's trying to go for the aggression and seeing him make the drops happen with the Blue Flame Hellions.
Well, look at this. Fantasy, he's going to move around the map, maybe try to go again, around the siege tank line, or trying to see if there's any fourth base on the left top corner of the map. And he could even try to lift up all the Marines into the medevacs and then go for a counter drop at the natural.
Yep. We do have +2 attack for both players on the way, even +1 vehicle attack for Fantasy here, so really focusing on his army composition, even adding a Thor into that army, interestingly enough, in addition to lots of tanks and Marauders, very just heavy-hitting units. And even a Banshee now on the way for Ty, so both players adding in a little bit more flavor to their unit composition beyond the standard.
So Fantasy is actually expecting his opponent to move out pretty soon. That's why he set up the siege line already, and this force is going to go into Ty's main base once the siege tanks move out.
Yeah, Fantasy, he is just itching to attack his opponent, but Ty, I have to really commend him. That's a lot of good defense there with those turrets, and now the fourth base for Ty, he's going to try to go ahead and take that. And that small Bioforce, I think that may be a mistake. Fantasy realizing that, moving out of there before he can lose any of those units.
Now, that's the time for Fantasy to slowly move out on the map. He does spot a few siege tanks, and Ty being really smart with those supply depots. Look at the positioning. That's going to defend against the bio that Fantasy has on the left top corner of the map.
And both players are pretty much maxed out now. Ty looking like he wants to move across the map. Fantasy deciding to move this Bioforce back, and a little bit of a poke here from Fantasy. He's setting up his siege tank line, but I mean, Ty, it looks like he's got a pretty good positional advantage at this point. He will be able to shell that third base with that siege tank.
Now remember, Mech is much stronger than the Bio army, and Fantasy, what he needs to do is slowly eat away on the Mech army, but you can't do that if Ty is already in position. That's why he's going to try to go for a counterattack at the third base with the Bio forces being over there.
And look at this nice Raven and Banshee play there, sniping off a few of Fantasy's tanks. Fantasy, though, he's going to move in with his main Bioforce. There are a lot of siege tanks there, and now SCV is being pulled off that mineral line. Good micro from Fantasy here. I think he wants to focus on doing a little bit of economic damage, moving back and to try to take out that third command center. And now it looks like Ty, he's moving back with his main army here. He has to defend against this attack, and it will be thwarted, but very efficient trade from Fantasy.
Yeah, I really like the fact that he just waited until Ty pushed out, and knowing that his opponent's army was split between his own third base and his opponent's third base, that's when he went for the attack and did a lot of damage against the SCVs. And, you know, he just only lost bio units. All the medevacs are still alive. Few Marauders are still out here. The tanks are still alive and well, so Ty cannot go for a counterattack easily.
Yep, Ty actually behind in supply slightly here. He's starting to add more and more Ravens into the army mix. +3 on the way for both players here. And look at this nice drop from Fantasy here. They're going to drop on those tanks, going to take them out quite easily here. And the Blue Flame Hellions will clean up the rest of those units, but the tanks that were shelling at that third base have been eliminated.
And Widow Mine also getting a kill once again on the
That
medevac.
Widow Mine still hasn't been killed.
You know, I'm trying to focus on the battle, and the Widow Mine comes out of nowhere, sniping the medevac. So I have to mention it when I see that Widow Mine still being alive, getting up to 3 kills.
I'm gonna be honest, man. I completely forgot about that Widow Mine.
Same
I thought
here.
it was gone, but apparently Fantasy forgot about it as well, and it still was there and did some damage.
Well, look at this. Ty setting up a siege tank line in the middle of the map saying, do not cross this line, forming
like,
a DMZ.
Do not enter. And look at this. Nice drops from Fantasy on that main tank line. The siege tanks from Fantasy lift up here, and now he has a very nice position, shelling on so many of those siege tanks. Fantasy, I think, overall got a slightly better trade here. Did lose a lot of his army, but he is ahead in supply.
Remember, he's going to have better reinforcements than his opponent because his opponent is trying to reinforce with Mechbot Fantasy.
You all right there, man?
Yeah.
Anyway, it looks like Fantasy is going to be able to reinforce slightly faster over his opponent. The supplies do favor him. He's getting another expansion on the map as well, but it is blocked by a Hellion. Surprisingly, we have not seen any blue flame, or sorry, we haven't seen any Hellbats from Tyet. He's just really focusing on that Wings of Liberty style mech and really just trying to fight for good positioning over his opponent. Anyway, give Supernova Maniac a second again, guys. Sorry, he coughed there, but back to the game here. Fantasy securing that top expansion out of this Hellion. Just moving into Fantasy's base here, scouting things. Not going to really do much beyond that, though. And Ty really just trying to control the center of the map with that turret line, using those tanks, really just trying to get the positional advantage.
Sorry, guys, I actually almost died there. This is not a joke. I almost swallowed something, but we're back. I'm still alive. It's all well. And Fantasy going for a counterattack at the natural. Going to try to take out the supply depots, but actually gain more coverage in this area.
May be able to supply block his opponent if he kills enough of these supply depots. Fantasy not in the best position, though. He will move back with those bio units, getting chased away by these